Test.
Commissioner McCormick, we are still letting a few more people into the meeting. So the waiting room is, everyone has been let in the meeting now. I can turn it over to you, Commissioner McCormick. We will continue to let in additional members as they continue to join. Commissioner, I think you're on mute.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Christy McCormick, Vice Chair of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission and Designated Federal Officer of the Local Leadership Council. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the LLC. And before we get to today's agenda, I'll ask Cami Foote, our Assistant Designated Federal Officer for the LLC, to call the roll and establish that we, in fact, have a quorum. Cami?
Great, thank you. At this time, I will be calling the roll. I'm going to be calling it alphabetical by state. So if you could take yourself off mute and indicate that you're here, and I'll apologize ahead of time if I mispronounce anybody's name. So we will start with Alabama. Andrea LaCroix. James Tatum. Julie, for Alaska, Julie Huseman.
Yes, present.
Lori Wilson.
Yes, present.
Arizona, Scott Jarrett.
Yes, present.
Raylene Richards.
Yes, present.
Phyllis Rhines for Arkansas.
Yes, present.
Melanie Winkler. Melanie Winkler. California, Donna Johnston. Ryan Ronco.
Good morning, Cami. Yes, present.
Good morning. Colorado, Carly Cuppus.
Present.
Lori Mitchell. Connecticut, Tim DiCarlo. Or yes. Antoinette Spinelli. Thought I saw that name come in. For Connecticut, Antoinette Spinelli. Delaware, Doris Young.
Present.
David Gillespie.
He's here with me. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
For Florida, Wesley Wilcox.
I'm here, Cami. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Early. Georgia, Charlotte Sosby.
Hi, Cami, I'm here.
Hello, thank you. Deidre Holden. Hawaii, Lyndon Yoshioka. Jade Fontaine Tanagawa. For Idaho, Michael Rosedale. Lon Cotton. Illinois, Don Gray. Indiana, Shelley Scepter. Jessica Bailey. Iowa, Eric Van Linker.
Here.
Rhonda Dieters.
Present.
Kansas, Jamie Shu.
Here.
Rick Piefo.
Hypho here.
Thank you. Louisiana, Bridget Hanna. Steve Rayborn. Maine, Kathleen Montejo.
Yes, here. Thank you.
Lisa Goodwin.
Yes, present.
Maryland, Catherine Berry.
Good afternoon, present.
Rui Lavoie. Massachusetts, Sergio Cornelio.
Present.
Danielle Seigard.
Present.
Michigan, Mary Clark.
Present.
Elizabeth Hundley. Minnesota, Michael Stahlberger.
Present.
Marilee Peterson.
Present.
Mississippi, Leroy Lacy. Van Lowry. Missouri, Brianna Lennon.
Present.
Shane Scholler.
Present.
We have vacancies for Montana and Nebraska. So Nevada, Heather Carmen. Jessica Kopke.
Present.
New Hampshire, Nicole Merrill. Sherry Farrell. New Jersey, Maureen Bugden. Shona Mac Pollock.
Good afternoon, everyone. Present.
New Mexico, Amanda Lopez Askin.
I'm here.
Naomi Mestis.
Good morning, present.
New York, Eric Haight. Dustin Zarni. North Carolina, Sarah Levere.
Present.
North Dakota, Dawn Roan. Darlene Carpenter.
Present.
Ohio, Brian Sleep.
Present.
Sherry Poland.
Present.
Oklahoma, Callie Sander.
Present.
Gwen Freeman. Oregon, Dan Lanoy. Tim Scott.
Here.
Pennsylvania, Tim Benyo. Thad Hall. Rhode Island, Nicholas Lima.
Here, present.
Jackson.
And Thad Hall is here from Pennsylvania.
Fantastic, thank you. Rhode Island, Jacqueline Schultz.
Present.
South Carolina, Mary Smalls. Cynthia Holland. South Dakota, Susan Kipke. Cindy Brugman. Tennessee, Tammy Smith.
Sorry, I'm here from South Dakota. I couldn't get my computer unmuted. Susan Kipke.
Thank you. Texas, Remy Garza.
Present.
Did I skip over Tennessee, Tammy Smith? Okay, back to Texas, Trudy Hancock.
Present.
Utah, Ricky Hatch.
Good afternoon, morning.
Marky Rowley. Virginia, Barbara Tabb. Brenda Cabrera.
Present.
Washington Garthell,
Glad to be here.
Skip Moore,
Present.
West Virginia Linda Huggins, Michelle Hawley,
Here.
Wisconsin Diane Conan, Wendy Christensen, Wyoming, our newest members, Deborah Lee,
Wisconsin, Diane Conan is here.
thank you, and Julie Fries from Wyoming. And I know there was a couple of people that we let in the waiting room. Commissioner McCormick, we do have a quorum, but if you would indulge me to just one more time, if I didn't call your name and you joined a little bit late, can you please let me know so we can record your attendance?
Good. Andrea Lee Croy from Alabama.
Thank you.
Connecticut, Alley.
Thank you.
David Galefsky, Delaware.
Thank you.
Marie Small, South Carolina.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Deidre Holden, Georgia.
All right. Is there anyone else? Commissioner McCormick, we have 51 members in attendance, 45 is a quorum. I will turn it back over to you.
Here we go. Thank you, Cammie. First, I want to thank you all for making time in your busy schedules to attend this important meeting. It's great to hear from folks from all across the country. For those watching online who may not be familiar with this EAC Advisory Board, the Local Leadership Council, or LLC, is made up of local election officials representing the professional election organizations of the 50 states. I particularly want to acknowledge those of you who attended the previous meeting of the LLC, where we unfortunately did not obtain a quorum. Thank you for your diligence and patience as we rescheduled this meeting. Fortunately, we have a quorum this time. So thank you also to those who sent us feedback on the 2022 election cycle. That information is being used to inform us on issues that may need addressing with additional resources. As you know, your insights help inform how we as an agency can better serve local election officials in your communities, our primary stakeholders. The Local Leadership Council has been called primarily to consider the adoption of the inaugural draft bylaws, a foundational document to the formation of the advisory committee, and its passage will allow us to move forward with electing leadership and getting down to the business this group was organized to do. Before we get into the meeting in more detail, the EAC and I personally would like to recognize your hard work and dedication to overseeing elections in your communities. In fact, many of you may not have been able to join our last meeting in December because you were fulfilling your post-election responsibilities. Every election has a story, and the 2022 election cycle was unique in many ways. You've withstood the test of new laws and regulations, supply chain shortages, resource limitations, mis and disinformation, some of you even physical threats, and the larger evolving landscape of our electoral system. Securing elections is not easy, and it takes a monumental effort to ensure the safety of staff members, poll workers, voting locations, and drop boxes, while safeguarding the integrity of the ballots and the voting equipment. We applaud you, your staff, and the thousands of other election officials and volunteers who continue to demonstrate your commitment to deliver free and fair elections despite these challenges. To every election official engaged in this important work, thank you. Just as every election is unique, I think it's important before we begin today to highlight the unique makeup of the LLC. The LLC is comprised entirely of local election officials who are leaders in their states and have direct knowledge of how the EAC can be most helpful to election administrators. Your backgrounds from across the country and from districts large and small are a critical addition to the input the EAC receives from our other FACA boards, the Standards Board, the Board of Advisors, and the Technical Guidelines Development Committee. The establishment of the LLC in 2021 was an important step, and today's meeting is a significant milestone for the board. Over the past year, the LLC Bylaws Committee has met several times with myself and EAC staff to draft the bylaws that we're discussing today. And I'd like to thank the members of the LLC Bylaws Committee and the EAC's Office of General Counsel and our staff for their hard work and input to get us to this point. The LLC Bylaws Committee was comprised of 10 members from diverse geographic regions across the United States: Donna Johnston, Carly Copps, Ricky Hatch, Lon Colton, Michael Stahlberger, Charlotte Sosby, Remy Garza, Barbara Tabb, and Doris Young, and previous LLC member Thomas Bride. Thank you for volunteering your time to help draft the bylaws that we're going to be considering today. Adoption of the bylaws will further define the organizational structure of the LLC, outline how it will function, and define the roles and responsibilities and duties of membership. As I've mentioned, this will be a foundational achievement toward the LLC functioning as envisioned, with an executive board, regional and subcommittees, and a more structured process to receive your input on EAC products and services. The EAC understands the critical value of feedback and input from stakeholders who are using our resources, and are grateful that you have joined this board to share your knowledge. For the next part of today's meeting, I'd like to introduce Stephen Fridd, the EAC's new executive director. We're very excited to welcome him to the EAC and look forward to his leadership as we continue in the mission that Congress envisioned, helping improve American elections. Steve is a long-term public servant whose resume includes serving the Office of Personnel Management, the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Education. He joined the agency last month, but it has already been great working with him as he learns about the work of the EAC and begins to direct our staff. Today's event is yet another good introduction to the work of the agency, but also a good introduction to some of the election officials and other stakeholders that the EAC serves. Steve is taking over for Mark Robbins, who has served as interim executive director over the last year. Steve, are you on? Would you like to say a few words to the LLC?
Yes, hi, Commissioner McCormick. Thanks for the warm welcome. I won't bore you guys with my resume, but I want to say that I think this is the start of my fourth week here at the EAC. I think Mona said this line, so I wouldn't want to steal anything from her, but I think she recognized the EAC as a small but mighty team. Those words definitely confer with me as well. I've been really excited and pretty pumped to see all the great work that the team here does, along with the commissioners. And, I hope to just continue on in the success that Mona and Mark Robbins had. So I'm pretty excited to be here today with all of you. And I hope to eventually be able to meet most, if not all of you in person. So please feel free to reach out to me if you guys have any questions or anything that I can be of assistance with. With that, I'll turn it back over to Commissioner McCormick. Thanks again for having me, and have a great day.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate that. Now we have some new members of the EAC who need to be, of the LLC who need to be sworn in. For those of you who are new to this organization, we're going to have you take the oath of office. If you could mute yourself as you take this and just repeat after me. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter. So help me God. Thank you and welcome to our new members. Our next order of business will be to approve the agenda. If you could put the agenda up, I'd appreciate it. I will now entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved, Commissioner McCormick.
Second.
Was that Wesley Wilcox first?
That's correct.
And who was second?
Sergio Canelio from Massachusetts.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any objections? It is moved and seconded that this body adopts the agenda before you. I will now take a voice vote to adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. The ayes have it and the agenda is adopted. We'll now turn to approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Do we have that to display on the screen?
While that's coming up, I move that we approve the minutes.
Thank you, Ricky Hatch. Is
I
there a second?
second. Charlotte Sosby George, I'll second.
Thank you, Charlotte. Any objection? It is moved and seconded that this body adopts the minutes. I will now take a voice vote to adopt the minutes. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All opposed say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it and the minutes are adopted. I will now turn this over to our acting general counsel and committee management officer, Amanda Joyner, to do a presentation on FACA membership and bylaws vote procedure. Amanda?
Thank you, Commissioner. And while we wait for the my presentation to be brought on screen, I want to thank all of you for your time today. It's really exciting to be here. And I look forward to going over a general overview of what it means to be a member of a FACA. And I will also go over the procedures for today's bylaws vote. Next slide, please. And here's my information. Amanda Joyner, Committee Management Officer and Acting General Counsel here at the EAC. I will provide my contact information at the end of the presentation in case anybody has some additional questions or follow-up. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Help America Vote Act, as many of you know, established 3 permanent advisory boards to assist the EAC in carrying out its mandates under the law. And of course, in 2021, the EAC established a 4th advisory board, the Local Leadership Council. Next slide, please. Each of these boards is subject to the Federal Advisory Committee Act, also known as FACA. Next slide. Now, FACA was enacted in 1972 to ensure advice by advisory committees is objective and accessible to the public. And to that end, the Act contains several requirements for the management of these FACA boards, including the naming of a designated federal officer and committee management officer to help maintain compliance with the law, records retention and availability requirements, and charter renewal procedures. Next slide, please. Here's a general overview of the duties of each of our advisory boards. Most importantly for today, the Local Leadership Council duties are to provide recommendations and feedback to the EAC on a range of election administration topics to include, but is not limited to, voter registration, voter list maintenance, voting system user practices, ballot administration, processing and counting, canvassing, auditing, and testing of ballots, and the certification of results. And of course, I echo everybody here at the EAC when I thank you for your service on this board and providing this really important guidance to us in our work. Next slide, please. Now, as a member of a FACA board, there are certain duties and responsibilities that apply regardless of the FACA board that you are a member of. Those include participating in meetings fully, submitting non-binding advice and recommendations to the EAC or the agency that you're associated with. Follow EAC approved charter for that board. Comport yourself with integrity and do not trade upon your position as a member of the EAC advisory board for your own personal benefit. This also includes a prohibition against using your service on the board to promote yourself, your products, or private parties. And one note for everybody's awareness, the law does require any permissible direct communications with Congress in your official capacity as a board member be made only through official channels of the EAC. Next slide, please. However, these restrictions do not prohibit you from lobbying members of Congress or state legislatures, urging others to do so on your own time and in your personal capacity. So it's important to remember that if you engage in that type of activity, that you make very clear that you're not representing an EAC advisory board and not acting in your official capacity as an advisory board member. Next slide, please. Here's some additional general guidance. As I mentioned earlier, agency heads are required to appoint designated federal officials who are responsible for the management and supervision of these committees. The EAC has also appointed alternate designated federal officials who help the DFOs in this work. Committees must have a charter filed, and the charters must be renewed every 2 years. The LLC charter was first enacted in June of 2021. So this year, the charter will be up for renewal. Next slide, please. The DFOs for the EAC boards are here. Of course, we have Vice Chairwoman Christy McCormick as our DFO for the LLC, but we are actually rotating the DFOs at the end of this week. So you will have a new DFO come Friday. Next slide, please. We do also have our alternate DFOs, as I mentioned earlier, Cammie Foote, who all of you have corresponded with and is really wonderful in her role as the LLC ADFO. And I listed the other ADFOs here. These will not rotate. They will stay the same throughout your time with us. Next slide, please. A couple of more items, excuse me, on a FACA board membership. Generally, the member selections are to be balanced in terms of the point of view represented and the geographical representation. So every time you send in, your association send in nominations to be a member of this board, we review those carefully with that in mind. We also do provide advance notice of all of our board meetings. These meetings are required to be open to the public, and meeting locations must accommodate public access. The DFO approves all committee meetings and agendas, and the DFO posts or their designee posts agendas and minutes to our website. The DFO must attend all meetings or the alternate DFO in her stead, adjourns any meeting if it's in the public interest, and can share all FACA board meetings. Next slide, please. Now I'll transition over to an overview of the inaugural bylaws adoption procedures. Today, you will vote on the inaugural bylaws, which were previously circulated via email. These were drafted with the bylaws committee after careful consideration of FACA management best practices, EAC policies and procedures, and membership feedback. The DFO and Chair, Christy McCormick, will present the resulting bylaws committee report, and each of the 14 articles of the bylaws will be read in its entirety. Next slide, please. This is an important part of the procedure. So after each article, the chair will provide an opportunity to debate or offer an amendment. If there is a non-substantive amendment offered, such as something to correct a typographical error, simple syntax, or some similar issues, that may be considered today. But if there are any substantive amendments which may materially alter or edit a provision of the bylaws, they will only be considered for a vote at a later date. So if something like that is proposed, the chair may entertain a motion to recommit that particular article to the committee for consideration of the amendment, or postpone that amendment to a future meeting. And then finally, at the end of reading all 14 articles, a vote will be taken on the bylaws as one document. And of course, a lot of you may be familiar with the 2/3 whenever there's an amendment to bylaws. Because these are the first set of bylaws for this committee, Robert's Rules of Order says that that they are adopted by a simple majority. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Maureen.
Hi.
Now, a look into the future here. If the bylaws pass
Hi, Christine.
today,
How are
the ADFO will promptly send out membership information about the election of members to the executive committee, which will be newly created by the bylaws should they pass. All of you will have an opportunity to nominate yourself or other members to that committee, and we anticipate holding those elections at the in-person meeting this year. And of course, if the bylaws do not pass today, the chair will take a motion to recommit the bylaws to the bylaws committee for continued work. Next slide, please. That concludes my presentation. I did list here a few of the applicable authorities which govern our work here today. Next slide, please. And here's my name and phone number and email address in case anybody has any final questions. I think somebody has a hand raised. Wesley?
Hi, Amanda. Going back to the membership section of this, you list what a member can't do. Specifically, my question, the majority of my bio consists of, hi, my name is Wesley. But if I go further in depth than that, am I allowed to list that I'm a member of this local leadership?
Yeah, yes, you are, Wesley. That is perfectly acceptable. There's no need not to include that in your biography.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before I turn it back over to the chair? All right, seeing none, thank you all for your time. Again, if you have any follow-up, please let me know, and I look forward to working with you the rest of today and in the future. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Amanda. Kristen, can we get the bylaws committee report shown on the screen?
Yes, I think Camden actually is going to be sharing his screen to show that.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So now we're going to turn to the main work of today's meeting, the bylaws. We received a bylaws committee report, which was accepted and certified by the general counsel and our committee management officer. And I'll note that our acting general counsel discussed how we're going to proceed and that we have circulated the bylaws by email. There we go. So this is the bylaws committee report, which we accepted, general counsel accepted and certified. And then we will go ahead and start showing the bylaws. These inaugural bylaws were developed over several months by the LLC Bylaws Committee. On February 2nd, 2023, the committee approved the draft inaugural bylaws that are being presented to you for your consideration today. The EAC Acting Bylaws Committee was carried out in accordance with the Federal Advisory Committee Act and related federal authorities, as our acting general counsel has shown, and in compliance with the policies and procedures of the U.S. Election Assistance Commission. The inaugural bylaws are presented today for your consideration and vote. I ask your patience as we go through this procedure, which is required by parliamentary procedure. In short, we'll hear and debate each provision separately. If there's any debate at all, we'll take that each provision separately. There are 14 provisions, and then we will take a final vote on the bylaws in total. More specifically, as our general counsel has mentioned, no substantive amendments or changes from the floor will be accepted, but the floor will be open for debate on each of the proposed articles of the bylaws before the vote. Should substantive amendments or changes be offered, I will ask for a motion to recommit the bylaws to the Bylaws Committee for consideration at a future meeting. Once it goes through the Bylaws Committee, we'll have to reconvene another meeting to approve the new draft bylaws. After our EAC Associate Counsel Camden Kelleher presents each article of the bylaws, I will open the floor for debate. No article will be considered for adoption until we have gone through all of the provisions and debated each of them. And the inaugural bylaws can be adopted of this body by a simple majority. So by direction of the committee, I move adoption of the bylaws. And Camden Kelleher will present Article 1 of the bylaws.
Sure. And before I jump into Article 1, can everybody see the screen and hear me? Okay. Okay. So Article 1, authority. The Commissioners of the Election Assistance Commission determined that the establishment of the council is in the public interest. The Local Leadership Council is subject to the Federal Advisory Committee Act, FACA, as outlined in its charter, filed with the Congress on June 8, 2021.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 1 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 1, and we'll move to Article 2.
Article 2, objectives. The Local Leadership Council will 1. Provide guidance and advice to the Election Assistance Commission on a variety of topics related to the administration of elections for federal office. 2. Make recommendations to the Election Assistance Commission. Neither the Executive Committee nor any subcommittees of the Local Leadership Council may make recommendations to the Election Assistance Commission without the consideration and approval of the Local Leadership Council. 3. Function solely as an advisory body.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 2 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 2, and we'll move on to Article 3.
Article 3, Local Leadership Council membership. 1. Pursuant to the Local Leadership Council Charter, the Local Leadership Council shall consist of 100 members, who shall be designated in accordance with the Office of Government Ethics as representative. 2. The Local Leadership Council shall consist of 2 members from each state. Members shall be appointed by the Election Assistance Commission and must be current local election officials who are currently serving or have previously served in a leadership role in a state local election official professional association if such an association exists in the state. The Election Assistance Commission shall seek nominations from each state local election official professional association, but is not required to appoint the nominees. If a state local election official professional association does not exist in a state, then the EAC may appoint 2 local election officials who are currently serving as a local election official in that state. The EAC shall appoint members consistent with subsection 3 of this article. 3. The 2 local leadership council members who represent the same state may not be of the same political affiliation in their professional capacities and should reflect the goal of soliciting diverse opinions and ideas. Additionally, the state local election official professional association, or EAC, shall make every reasonable effort to nominate geographically diverse members. Geographically diverse means a reasonable representation of both rural and urban localities. 4. Membership terms, subsection A. Members shall not have a set term, and membership shall continue upon local leadership charter renewal. Subsection B. If a local leadership council member no longer meets the requirements of this article, then the member seat shall be considered vacant. Commissioner, I believe you're still on mute.
Thank you. I will now open the floor for debate on Article 3 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 3, and we will move on to Article 4.
Article 4, Local Leadership Council Member Vacancies. 1. The State Local Election Official Professional Association of each state shall notify the Election Assistance Commission and the Executive Committee of the vacancy to the Local Leadership Council within 5 business days of any vacancy or membership changes to the Local Leadership Council. If the vacating member is from a state without a local election official professional association, then the vacating member or their designee shall notify the Election Assistance Commission and the Executive Committee of the vacancy to the Local Leadership Council within 5 business days of any vacancy or membership changes to the Local Leadership Council. 2. Vacancy appointments to the Local Leadership Council shall be as follows. Subsection A. All 100 members shall be current local election officials who are currently serving or have previously served in a leadership role in a state local election official professional association if such an association exists in the state. If a state local election official professional association does not exist in a state, then the members must be local election officials who are currently serving as a local election official in that state. Subsection B. Each state shall have 2 members serving on the Local Leadership Council concurrently. Subsection C. In the event that a vacancy occurs in membership, the state local election official professional association shall submit a replacement nominee to the Election Assistance Commission and the Executive Committee of the Local Leadership Council within 30 days of the notification of vacancy. If a state local election official professional association does not exist in a state, then the EAC shall select a replacement appointee consistent with the membership requirements within 30 days of the notification of vacancy. Subsection D. The state local election official professional association shall submit a replacement nominee who is either of a different political affiliation than the active member from the state or non-affiliated if there is one vacancy in membership. If both seats from the state become vacant at the same time, the state local election official professional association shall submit 2 nominees, but may not submit 2 nominees with the same political affiliation. The EAC Office of General Counsel shall review the designated federal officer, shall review, and the designated federal officer or Election Assistance Commission shall consider replacement nominations from each state local election official professional association, but is not required to accept the nominees.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 4 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 4, and we will now move on to Article 5.
Article 5, Executive Committee of the Local Leadership Council. The Local Leadership Council shall elect 10 of its members to serve as the Executive Committee of the Local Leadership Council as follows. 1. Membership. Subsection A. Not more than 2 members of the Executive Committee may be from each region as defined by this subsection, and no 2 members of the same region may be of the same political affiliation in their professional capacities. Subsection B. Region 1 shall include Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, Utah, and Washington. Subsection C. Region 2 shall include Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Subsection D. Region 3 shall include Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Texas. Subsection E. Region 4 shall include Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Maryland, Michigan, Ohio, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Subsection F. Region 5 shall include Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Vermont. 2. Nominations. Subsection A. Expired terms. Roman numeral 1. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall solicit nominations for the Executive Committee from members of each region. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall send to the local leadership council members a solicitation no later than 75 days immediately prior to the expiration of any executive committee member's term. The solicitation shall designate the address and form for submitting nominations. Roman numeral 2. Local leadership council members may nominate themselves or other local leadership council members by responding to the solicitation. Roman numeral 3. Nominations shall be submitted to the local leadership council's designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission in writing and may be submitted electronically no later than 45 days after receipt of solicitation from the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission. Upon receipt of nominations, the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall prepare ballot information to be distributed to the local leadership council at least 15 days prior to the date of the local leadership council meeting immediately preceding the expiration of executive committee member terms. Roman numeral 4. Nominations for membership on the executive committee shall not be accepted from the floor of a local leadership council meeting. Roman numeral 5. If the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission does not receive a sufficient number of nominees for the positions to be filled, taking into account the regional and political affiliation requirements of each open position, the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall submit a list of nominees at least 20 days prior to the date of the local leadership council meeting immediately following the submission deadline. Subsection B, vacancies before the end of a term. Roman numeral 1. This subsection applies if a vacancy on the executive committee occurs more than 90 days before the expiration of a member's term on the executive committee. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall send to local leadership council members of the region in which the vacancy occurred a solicitation no later than 60 days before the next meeting of the local leadership council. The solicitation shall designate the address and form for submitting nominations. Roman numeral 2. Local leadership council members may nominate themselves or other local leadership council members by responding to the solicitation. Roman numeral 3. Local leadership council members must nominate a regional member of a different political affiliation than the non-vacant executive committee member from the region or a member with no political affiliation. Nominations for a regional member of the same political affiliation as the non-vacant executive committee member of the region shall not be considered valid. Roman numeral 4. Nominations shall be submitted to the local leadership council's designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission in writing and may be submitted electronically no later than the date indicated upon the solicitation. Roman numeral 5. Upon receipt of nominations, the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall prepare ballot information to be distributed to the local leadership council at least 15 days prior to the date of the local leadership council meeting immediately following the submission deadline. Roman numeral 6. Nominations for membership on the executive committee shall not be accepted from the floor of a local leadership council meeting. Subsection C, initial terms. Roman numeral 1. This subsection applies to the nominations of executive committee members to be elected following the initial adoption of these bylaws. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall solicit nominations for the executive committee from members of each region. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall send to local leadership council members a solicitation no later than 30 days immediately prior to the meeting at which the first election of executive committee member is to occur. The solicitation shall designate the address and form for submitting nominations. Roman numeral 2. Local leadership council members may nominate themselves or other local leadership council members by responding to the solicitation. Roman numeral 3. Nominations shall be submitted to the local leadership council's designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission in writing and may be submitted electronically no later than 15 days after receipt of solicitation from the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission. Upon receipt of nominations, the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall prepare ballot information to be distributed to the local leadership council at least 5 days prior to the date of the local leadership council meeting at which the first election of executive committee member is to occur. Roman numeral 4. If the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission does not receive a sufficient number of nominees for the positions to be filled, taking into account the regional and political affiliation requirements of each open position, the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall submit a list of nominees at least 5 days prior to the date of the local leadership council meeting immediately following the submission deadline. Subsection 3, elections. Subsection A. Elections to the executive committee shall occur by region, with local leadership council members casting a vote for the candidate to the executive committee from their respective region only. Subsection B. Elections to the executive committee shall be by secret ballot. If the number of candidates in a specific region is equal to the number of seats to be elected, and a secret ballot is not necessary to determine the length of the term in which a member is to be elected, the local leadership council may instead elect the candidates by acclamation. Subsection C. The ballot shall be designed to enable local leadership council members to select candidates from their region only. Concise biographical information for each candidate shall be provided to each local leadership council member in advance of the election. Subsection D. All election results shall be tabulated and certified by the Election Assistance Commission. Subsection E. No two regional members of the executive committee may be of the same political affiliation. Therefore, when 2 seats are being filled, the nominee receiving the highest number of votes shall further fill the first seat, and the nominee of a different political affiliation or no political affiliation receiving the next highest number of votes shall fill the second seat. Subsection F. In the case of a tie vote between the candidates at an election, the Election Assistance Commission shall automatically recount the votes cast for the tied candidate. If, following the recount, a tie remains, the Election Assistance Commission shall resolve the tie by a toss of a coin. Subsection G. If the local leadership council is unable to meet for elections before the end of an executive committee member's term, the sitting members of the executive committee shall remain in their elected capacity until the local leadership council is able to meet again and a new member is elected. Subsection H. Votes for the executive committee elections may be made by absentee ballot provided the following. Roman numeral 1. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall create forms for absentee voting. Roman numeral 2. Absentee ballots shall be received by the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission at the address indicated on the absentee ballot no later than 3 days prior to the start date of the local leadership council meeting immediately following the nomination submission deadline. Roman numeral 3. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall review all absentee ballots received by the deadline to ensure that they include all identifying information requested on the form. Where identifying information is missing, the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall contact local leadership council members to complete the identifying information on the form. Roman numeral 4. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall retain all absentee ballots received by the deadline indicated in these bylaws and record and tabulate each absentee ballot and include absentee ballots in election results. Roman numeral 5. A member that has submitted an absentee ballot may revoke their absentee ballot if they plan to attend the meeting. Revocation of an absentee ballot must be received no later than 3 days prior to the start date of the local leadership council meeting immediately following the nomination submission deadline. A revocation of an absentee ballot must be sent to the same address at which the absentee ballot was originally submitted. A revocation of an absentee ballot shall be considered final, and the member may not resubmit an absentee ballot. Subsection 4. Executive committee members' terms of service and vacancies. Subsection A, generally. Roman numeral 1. The designated federal officer shall serve as the chair of the executive committee. Roman numeral 2. An executive committee member may be removed from the executive committee for cause by a vote of 2/3 of the other executive committee members present at the meeting, excluding the chair and members subject to removal. Subsection 1. For cause shall mean continued failure to perform executive committee duties as required by Article 6, subsection 4, conflict of interest or misconduct in office. Subsection 2. To initiate a vote on removal from the executive committee, another member of the executive committee must file a written complaint with the chair no later than 30 days prior to the next meeting of the executive committee. The written complaint shall include an explanation of cause for removal from the executive committee. The chair shall review the complaint and have discretion to determine if a removal vote is warranted. If the chair determines that a removal vote is not warranted, the chair shall notify the member who submitted the complaint. Subsection 3. If the chair determines that the complaint warrants a removal vote, then the chair shall notify the executive committee members no later than 7 days prior to the next executive committee meeting. The chair will also notify the members subject to removal of the reasons submitted for removal no later than 7 days prior to the executive committee meeting at which the removal vote is scheduled to occur. Subsection 4. At least 6 members of the executive committee, excluding the member subject to removal and the chair, must be present for a vote on removal to occur. If 6 members are not present, then the removal vote will be rescheduled for the next meeting of the executive committee. Subsection 5. The member subject to removal shall have an opportunity to explain why removal is not warranted at the executive committee meeting. Following this explanation, the executive committee members, excluding the member subject to removal and the chair, shall vote by secret ballot on removal. Subsection 6. Absentee and proxy voting shall not be permitted for removal votes. Subsection 7. If the member is removed by a 2/3 vote of the executive committee members, then the executive committee seat shall be considered vacant and shall be filled in accordance with Article 5, subsection B(2). B. Vice Chair and Secretary. Roman numeral 1. Within 30 days of an executive committee election, the executive committee members shall convene to elect a vice chair and secretary. The vice chair and secretary shall serve for a term of 2 years as described in Article 5, subsection 4C. Section C. Termed. Roman numeral 1. The executive committee members, not including the DFO as chair, shall serve a 2-year term measured by the local leadership council charter. Executive committee members' terms shall begin on the day that the executive committee charter is filed or renewed and end on the day that the local leadership council charter expires. Newly elected executive committee members shall officially start their term on the day that the local leadership council charter is renewed. Subsection D. Initial term. Roman numeral 1. The term of the executive committee members first elected following the initial adoption of these bylaws shall begin on the day that they are elected and end on the day that the local leadership council charter is first renewed following the election. Subsection E. Subsequent terms. Roman numeral 1. Members of the executive committee shall serve for a term of 2 years consistent with the local leadership council charter and may not serve for more than 3 consecutive terms. Subsection 5. Meetings. Subsection A. The designated federal officer shall have the authority to call an executive council meeting. These meetings must allow each executive committee member to include their comments and hear or view others' comments. Subsection B. Any 2 members of the executive committee may request that the designated federal officer call an executive committee meeting by filing the original call of the meeting with the designated federal officer, including the stated reason for calling the meeting and the date and time of the meeting. Such meetings include, but are not limited to, meetings by conference call and virtual electronic media meeting. These meetings must allow each executive committee member to include their comments and hear or view others' comments. Subsection C. A simple majority of executive committee members, excluding the chair, shall be present for a quorum. Subsection D. The executive committee shall agree to actions by a majority roll call vote of seated members of the executive committee. Subsection E. Proxy voting shall not be allowed in executive committee votes. Subsection F. Any member of the local leadership council may attend at the discretion of the chair, may participate in any and all discussion at an executive committee meeting, but may not vote on executive committee matters.
I'll now open the floor for debate on Article 5 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate has now ended on Article 5. And I just want to give Camden a breather. Thank you for your patience. I know this is quite detailed and just necessary, so hang on. We'll get to better stuff in a little bit, but we're getting there. So we'll now move on to Article 6.
Article 6, Executive Committee Duties. Subsection 1, Chair. The chair, designated federal officer, shall, subsection A, preside over all meetings of the Executive Committee and local leadership council. Subsection B, appoint the chair of standing committees and any ad hoc committees of the local leadership council. Subsection C, establish the agenda for meetings of the Executive Committee and local leadership council. Subsection D, call meetings of the Executive Committee and local leadership council. Subsection E, acts as the official liaison between the local leadership council and the Election Assistance Commission for all resolutions, recommendations, and information requests. Subsection F, serve as an ex officio member of all committees. Subsection G, appoint a parliamentarian to advise and assist the chair in running all meetings in accordance with Robert's Rules of Order. Subsection H, review and approve council minutes before distribution to council members. Subsection I, ensure that meeting minutes are properly on file at the Election Assistance Commission. Subsection J, adjourn local leadership council and executive committee meetings when such adjournment is in the public interest. Subsection K, notice. The chair shall, Roman numeral 1, notify members of the time and place for each meeting of the local leadership council and the executive committee. Roman numeral 2, notify the public of time and place for the meeting of the local leadership council. Roman numeral 3, perform other duties as required in these bylaws. Subsection L, record keeping and administration. The chair shall, Roman numeral 1, maintain records for all meetings, including subgroup or working group activities as required by law. Roman numeral 2, maintain the roll. Roman numeral 3, assure that minutes of all local leadership council meetings are prepared and distributed. Roman numeral 4, maintain and house at the Election Assistance Commission all official local leadership council records, including subgroup and working group activities. Roman numeral 5, file all papers and submissions prepared for or by the local leadership council, including those items generated by subgroups and working groups. Roman numeral 6, respond to official correspondence. Roman numeral 7, prepare and handle all reports, including the annual report as required by FACA. Roman numeral 8, act as the local leadership council's agent to collect, validate, and pay all vouchers for pre-approved expenditures. Subsection 2, Vice Chair. The Vice Chair shall, A, serve as chair of the steering committee. B, assist the chair from time to time as the chair may designate. C, notify members of their appointment to standing committees and ad hoc committees. D, review council minutes before distribution to council members. E, assist the chair in setting the agenda for executive committee and local leadership council meetings. Subsection 3, Secretary. The secretary shall, A, serve as chair of the proxy committee. B, review council minutes before distribution to council members. C, assist the chair in ensuring that meeting minutes are properly on file at the EAC. D, call the roll at executive committee meetings. Subsection 4, executive committee members. Executive committee members shall, A, attend executive committee and local leadership council meetings. B, perform all duties required under applicable federal laws. C, appoint the membership of appropriate standing committees and ad hoc committees by soliciting interest from the local leadership council membership. D, meet as necessary to address issues of concern in between local leadership council meetings. E, perform all other duties as from time to time the local leadership council may delegate to the executive committee.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 6 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 6. We'll now move on to Article 7.
Article 7, meetings. Subsection 1. The local leadership council shall meet on an annual basis or otherwise as requested by the Election Assistance Commission to address issues presented by the Election Assistance Commission. Such meetings include, but are not limited to, meetings by conference call and virtual electronic media meetings. These meetings must allow each local leadership council member to include their comments and view or hear others' comments. Such meetings shall be held in accordance with all applicable federal law. Subsection 2. Meetings shall be called by the designated federal officer. Subsection 3. The designated federal officer shall approve the agenda for all meetings. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall distribute the agenda to the local leadership council member prior to each meeting and shall publish notice of the meeting in the Federal Register as required by FACA. Subsection 4. Local leadership council members and members of the public may submit agenda items to the designated federal officer. Subsection 5. Open meetings. A. Unless otherwise determined in advance, all local leadership council meetings shall be open to the public. B. Members of the public may attend any meeting or portion of a meeting that is not closed to the public and may, at the determination of the chair, offer oral comment at such meetings. The chair may decide in advance to exclude oral public comment during a meeting, in which case the meeting announcement published in the Federal Register will note that oral comment from the public is excluded. In such a case, the local leadership council will accept written comments as an alternative. In addition, members of the public may submit written statements to the Election Assistance Commission. C. All materials brought before or presented to the local leadership council during the conduct of an open meeting, including but not limited to the minutes of the proceedings of the previous open meeting, will be available to the public for review or copying at the time of the scheduled meeting. Approved minutes will also be made available to the public on the EAC website. D. Once an open meeting has begun, it will not be closed to the public unless prior approval of the closure has been obtained and proper notice of the closed meeting has been given to the public. E. If during the course of an open meeting, matters inappropriate for public disclosure arise during discussion, the chair will order such discussion to cease and will schedule it for a closed session pursuant to the bylaws. Subsection 6. Closed sessions. A. Notices regarding portions of meetings to be closed, to be referred to as sessions hereinafter, will be published in the Federal Register at least 15 calendar days in advance. B. Local leadership council sessions will be closed to the public only in limited circumstances and in accordance with applicable law. The local leadership council must obtain prior approval to conduct a closed session. Requests for closed sessions must be submitted by the designated federal officer to the Election Assistance Commission's Office of General Counsel with a reasonable amount of time to certify that, in the General Counsel's opinion, the meeting may be closed to the public. C. Where the designated federal officer, in conjunction with the Office of General Counsel, has determined in advance that discussions during a local leadership council meeting will involve matters about which public disclosure would be harmful to the interests of the government, industry, or others, an advance notice of a closed session citing the applicable exemptions of the Government in the Sunshine Act shall be published in the Federal Register. The notice may announce the closing of all or just part of a meeting. D. Minutes of closed sessions are not available to the public and as a result, not subject to the Freedom of Information Act. 7. Minutes. A. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall ensure that detailed minutes of each meeting are prepared and distributed to the local leadership council members. B. Meeting minutes shall include the following: 1. Time. 2. Date. 3. Location. 4. Record of persons present. 5. A complete and accurate description of the matters discussed and conclusions reached. And 6. Copies of all reports received, issued, or approved by the local leadership council. C. Meeting minutes are considered part of the official government record. D. All documents, reports, or other materials prepared by or for the local leadership council constitute official government records and shall be housed at the Election Assistance Commission and maintained according to the Federal Records Act.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 7 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate now ended on Article 7, and we will now on to Article 8.
Article 8, Quorum and Proxy Voting. Subsection 1, Quorum. A. A quorum shall be established when a simple majority of seated local leadership council members are present for a meeting as determined by a roll call or quorum call of the local leadership council members. Subsection 2, Proxy Vote. A. Proxy designations may be submitted in writing to the chair up to immediately prior to the designated meeting start time of the local leadership council meeting established via the meeting agenda. A proxy designation may be submitted by electronic transmission. An original signature is not required if a proxy designation is submitted by electronic transmission. The chair or Election Assistance Commission shall provide the proxy designation to the proxy committee prior to voting. B. Proxy votes may only be cast by local leadership council members, provided proxy designations have been timely filed in advance, with the chair clearly identifying the local leadership council member selected to cast an absent member's proxy vote. C. The proxy committee shall verify the eligibility of a member designating a proxy vote and of the member designated to cast a proxy vote on behalf of the absent local leadership council members. D. Proxy voting shall be allowed for all business matters other than executive committee elections. E. Proxy voting shall not be allowed for executive committee elections. Subsection 3, Voting generally. A. The local leadership council shall agree to actions by a majority vote of those present and voting unless otherwise specified by these bylaws. B. Votes by the local leadership council on recommendations to the Election Assistance Commission shall have the ayes, nays, and abstentions recorded. C. Votes taken during meetings conducted by conference call and through virtual electronic media means shall have a quorum established prior to voting.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article of the proposed bylaws. Hearing debate.
I believe that, Commissioner, we might have lost you for a second. I don't know if that was just for me, but I believe that you were closing the debate on.
Yes, I closed debate. Debate is now ended on Article 8, and we'll move on to Article 9.
Thank you. Article 9, Committees. Subsection 1. In appointing members to committees, the local leadership council shall pay particular attention to ensuring politically and geographically diverse membership. Subsection 2, Meetings. A. All committees may meet informally at any time for the purpose of conducting their business, including telephonically or through electronic media. Subsection 3, Standing Committees. A. Bylaws Committee. Roman numeral 1. The Bylaws Committee shall be comprised of 10 members. Roman numeral 2. The Bylaws Committee shall submit a report with all recommended bylaws amendments to the Executive Committee for a 7-day comment period before submitting recommendations to the local leadership council for resolution and adoption. B, proxy committee. Roman numeral 1. The proxy committee shall be comprised of 5 local leadership council members. The secretary of the executive committee shall serve as chair of the proxy committee. Roman numeral 3. The executive committee of the local leadership council shall appoint 4 other local leadership council members to the proxy committee on the day of a local leadership council meeting at which voting on general business matters is scheduled to take place. Roman numeral 4. The proxy committee shall meet to verify the eligibility of a member designating a proxy vote and of the member designated to cast a proxy vote on behalf of the absent local leadership council members. Subsection C, steering committee. Roman numeral 1. The steering committee shall be comprised of 3 members of the executive committee. Roman numeral 2. The vice chair of the executive committee shall serve as chair of the steering committee. Roman numeral 3. The executive committee shall appoint the other 2 members of the steering committee. All 3 members of the steering committee must be from different regions as defined in Article 5, subsection 1. Roman numeral 4. The steering committee shall oversee regional subcommittees, attend regional subcommittee meetings, and report on regional subcommittee meetings to the executive committee. Subsection 4. Regional subcommittees. A. The steering committee shall establish a subcommittee for each region as defined in Article 5, subsection 1 of these bylaws for a total of 5 regional subcommittees. B. Each regional subcommittee shall be comprised of 20 local leadership council members. C. The steering committee shall appoint an executive committee member elected by each region to serve as chair of the regional subcommittee. Members of the steering committee may not serve as chair of regional subcommittees. D. The chairs of each regional subcommittee shall ensure that each regional subcommittee meet no less than once a year. E. The chair of each regional subcommittee, in coordination with the steering committee, shall set the agenda for regional subcommittee meetings. Subsection 5. Ad hoc committees. A. A local leadership council member wishing to establish an ad hoc committee must present to the local leadership council the reason she is requesting the committee. B. The local leadership council may, at any time, by a majority vote, establish an ad hoc committee subject to approval by the designated federal officer. C. Once an ad hoc committee has been established, the executive committee shall appoint members to the ad hoc committee.
Now open to the floor for debate on Article 9 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 9, and we'll move to Article 10.
Article 10, Amendment. Subsection 1. The Local Leadership Council Bylaws Committee shall promulgate a form for proposing an amendment to the Local Leadership Council's bylaws. A. The form shall require the specific language of the proposed amendment to be included, identify the author of the amendment, and be designed to elicit the rationale and impact of the proposed amendment. 2. All proposed bylaws changes must be submitted in writing to the designated federal officer at least 70 days before the date of the local leadership council meeting at which the changes are to be considered for adoption. 3. After receiving proposed bylaw changes, the designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall forward the proposed changes to the local leadership council executive committee, the bylaws committee, and the Election Assistance Commission's general counsel. A. The general counsel shall report in an expeditious manner to the bylaws committee and the executive committee whether a proposed change to the bylaws is consistent with federal law and/or rules. B. The designated federal officer shall place the report on the proposed change to the local leadership council's bylaws on the agenda for the next meeting of the local leadership council. Subsection 4. The designated federal officer or the Election Assistance Commission shall forward all proposed changes to the local leadership council members at least 30 days prior to the next meeting of the local leadership council via email. Subsection 5. The bylaws may be amended by a 2/3 vote of the members present and voting at any local leadership council meeting.
I'll now open the floor for debate on Article 10 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 10, and we'll move on to Article 11.
Article 11, expenses and reimbursement. 1. Expenses related to the local leadership council operations will be borne by the Election Assistance Commission. 2. Expenditures of any kind must be approved in advance by the designated federal officer. 3. Local leadership council members shall not receive any compensation for their services, but shall be paid travel expenses, including per diem in lieu of subsistence, at rates authorized for employees of federal agencies under Subchapter 1 of Chapter 57 of Title 5, United States Code, while away from their homes or regular places of business in performance of their services for the local leadership council.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 11 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 11, and we'll move on to Article 12.
Article 12, Parliamentary Authority. 1. The rules contained in the current edition of Robert's Rules of Order newly revised shall govern the local leadership council in all cases to which they are applicable and in which they are not inconsistent with these bylaws, and any special rules of order the local leadership council may adopt. 2. Voting procedures for the local leadership council, the executive committee, and other committees shall follow the accepted procedure according to Robert's Rules of Order.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 12 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 12, and we'll move on to Article 13.
Article 13, effective date. 1. These bylaws are effective upon adoption by the local leadership council.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 13 of the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 13, and we will now move on to Article 14.
Article 14, transition procedures and ratification. 1. All acts of the local leadership council, the executive committee, or a committee of the local leadership council are hereby ratified, except to the extent that an act does not conform with a resolution adopted by the local leadership council before the effective date of these bylaws.
I will now open the floor for debate on Article 4, the proposed bylaws. Hearing none, debate is now ended on Article 14. The reading of the inaugural bylaws is complete, and the entire set of bylaws is now open to debate. Is there any additional debate on these provisions? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of the bylaws. Those in favor of adopting the bylaws say aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the inaugural bylaws are adopted. Thank you so much for your patience through all of that. I know it was lengthy and a long haul, but we did it. So thank you so much. So now we'll move on to discussion items. You should all have received, we sent out ahead of the meeting. Thank you to everyone who took time to complete it. We heard from several of you who would like to see to attend your state professional association conferences. We always appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and your colleagues and share information about the EAC and the resources we have available to help work. Those of you that let us know you'd be interested in the EAC speaking at your conference, the EAC staff will be reaching out soon for more details. And if you haven't yet responded to the survey, there is still time. And we'll be sending the survey link out again after the meeting. I want to move on to National Poll Worker Recruitment Day. Started in 2020 by the EAC, this day of action is meant to supplement what election offices are doing to recruit poll workers and bring national attention to the ongoing need for temporary staff during early voting and on election day. The EAC has toolkits with sample social media posts, emails, and social graphics to help offices participate. And previously, we have held National Poll Worker Recruitment Day in August. That was in 2020. We held it in January in 2022. We also held Help America Vote Day in September of 2022. The EAC wants this effort to be as helpful as possible. And so our question for you all today is, when in 2023 and 2024 would an effort like this be the most beneficial to your jurisdiction and the jurisdictions in your states? Would it be better if the day was a consistent date regardless of the year? So I'll open the floor to discussion if anybody wants to discuss when we should hold these national days of action. What would work for your jurisdictions?
Commissioner.
Wesley?
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Commissioner McCormick, although I recognize consistency between years, election years are not consistent. And with most of us having a presidential preference primary of some sort early in 24, going to 26 in a gubernatorial year as it is in the state of Florida, advertising early in the year in January in 26 is not going to be beneficial. Therefore, I think we need to make it a year by year call, depending on what's on our schedules for that year. So 23, the state of Florida, there are no statewide scheduled elections. So we would be, in favor of anything you want to do in 23, but 24 would be another story. Thank you.
Thank you, Wesley. Anyone else? I see the comment from Delaware. Poll worker June or July would be great.
Yes, I would like to make notification as far as Georgia's concerned. We will hold our municipal general elections in November. And from what I'm hearing, our PPP is going to be pretty early. So my suggestion would be for us, maybe around October for poll worker recruitment. And that would also will be able for us to identify potential workers for our PPP.
Okay, thank you. Brenda Cabrera from Virginia.
Yes, Virginia, the land of elections all the time.
Yes.
So October would be late for us. And most years we do have local elections. This year we have primaries in June. And so I would concur probably with more of a June, July timeframe. By the end of August, we have already made our assignments and are working on training.
Appreciate that. Other discussion? We do have 2 days we can do. We can do the Help America Vote Day, and we can also do the National Poll Worker Recruitment Day. So we could split them up into 2 different days depending on the year as well. Make maybe one consistent and move the other around. I think we were thinking that the Help America Vote Day would be actually a little bit larger scope than just poll workers or election workers. Maybe get into some voter education, but love to hear your feedback on that. I see that Colorado would agree with Georgia. And January, February works for Oregon. In Michigan, we'll have a February presidential primary, so January is almost too late. Let's see, other election recruitment would be most helpful in early June of 2024. And Donna Johnson from California likes both dates for California. Any other discussion on that? We can continue this, and you can certainly let us know via email or by the survey. We'd love to have your input because we want to make sure this works for. It is hard, of course, to come up with specific days for the entire country. But it has been very successful in the past. We've recruited a number of poll workers. It's hard to say how many, but we're probably into many thousands, tens of thousands of workers that have responded. to those national days of action. So we'd like to continue that going forward.
This is
Yes,
Charlotte
please.
again.
Sure, Charlotte.
You mentioned 2 different days and 2 different times of the year. I think that's a great idea because whichever of the 2, I'm going to use both opportunities to recruit and do,
Right.
the other. So I think that's a great idea.
Great. Thank you for that input. Okay, I see your comment. Phyllis and Doris. And thank you. Keep comments coming. We'll make sure to keep track of all of that. And in the interest of time, I'm going to go on to the Cleary Awards. I just want to, as a reminder, that the annual clearinghouse or Cleary
Looks like Commissioner McCormick is frozen. So I can take over until she rejoins us. This is just a reminder that the Cleary Award submission deadline is fast approaching. If you're unfamiliar with the Cleary Awards, it's a national effort that the EAC adopted several years ago to recognize and celebrate the innovative efforts that you all put in at the local and state level to improve elections. We invite all jurisdictions, no matter the size or scope of the project, to share your good work so that others can learn about successful programs in election administration. Any program used in the election can be submitted for consideration. To highlight your crucial contributions, we're also expanding the state association program category to include information from your local offices. We'll be continuing to receive entries until next week, February 28th. So if you are just learning about this now, you can find out more information on our website at eac.gov/Clearys, or you can always email me. You should all have my information, and happy to send along information on how you can submit for the Cleary Awards. The next item on the agenda is the LLC meeting date and venue. I believe Commissioner Hovland is also on the call if you would like to jump in here. The next step is setting up the LLC as the election of officers that's going to take place in our annual meeting. And we hope that
Kimmy, I'm back.
Okay, fantastic.
I'll apologize. I got kicked off there for a little bit. So thank you for picking up for me.
Absolutely.
Sure. So on the annual meeting, as Cami said, the next step will be setting up the election of officers, which will take place in the annual meeting. And we are hopeful that we can hold this meeting in person. We're considering locations for the meeting, including in Washington, D.C., where we'd very much like to host all of you, but also realize that, the summer, which is what we're looking at right now, is not always the most pleasant in Washington with the heat and humidity. But if we meeting there this time, we'll make it a location for an upcoming of the LLC. We're going to be sending a survey question asking if you can or cannot make the week of July 17th to the 21st work for your schedules. Please be diligent in responding, and we're hoping that a couple of days in that week will work to hold an in-person meeting. And of course, we must get a quorum. So if we don't receive enough positive responses, we'll have to look for another week. And the EAC staff will coordinate with you to cover your hotel and travel expenses. To that end, we'll be in contact with you as we continue the planning process for our first in-person annual meeting. We're very excited about that. So I want to say thank you to everyone for your participation today. I know it was a long slog through those bylaws, so thank you so much. You all deserve a medal for hanging on through that process. I almost quit in the middle. I'm just kidding, but thank you for doing that. And as I stated earlier, by adopting those inaugural bylaws today, we've helped establish the foundation of our newest FACA board and the only EAC advisory board made up entirely of local election officials. For those of you who are not in attendance during our last meeting, the roles of designated federal offices for each of the EAC boards rotates each year. I think our Associate General Counsel mentioned that, or Acting General Counsel. As of February 24th, Commissioner Ben Hovland will be our new LLC DFO and Vice Chair of the Commission. This is my final meeting as DFO of the LLC, but I, along with my fellow commissioners, will continue to be involved and interested in the LLC and the rest of our FACA boards. I very much appreciate your service to the EAC and to voters in your communities. You can always contact me with any concerns you have, and I know this board will be in good hands with Commissioner Hovland. Commissioner Hovland, before I move for adjournment, would you like to address the board? You're on mute. There you go. Technical difficulties.
Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Oh, great. I was having connectivity issues earlier, so I had to do the phone combo. I just had prepared a short statement that I was going to have Camden read. Camden did enough reading today. Really just excited about this. Again, echo Commissioner McCormick's sentiments. I know that was long, but just appreciate it's a big step forward. I'm looking forward to working with you all and figuring out the first ever in-person meeting for this body, and we'll continue to, as Vice Chair McCormick noted, send out some surveys and figure out when can work for the most of folks. But again, anything that we can do, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hovland. So now I will take a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
So I've heard a motion and a second. It's been properly moved and seconded to adjourn this meeting of the Local Leadership Council. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you all so much, and I hope to see you at the first annual meeting in person. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Go dogs.
Go dogs.
Bye, everyone.